There's a reason you feel resistance every time you try to pray at midnight. You don't get distracted randomly. Your phone doesn't ring accidentally. Your mind doesn't wander out of nowhere. These are not coincidences. These are patterns. When I was inside the coven, the first thing they taught me was simple. Never let a believer pray clearly, especially at night. Midnight prayers carry a level of focus and intensity that the kingdom of darkness cannot afford to ignore. So, they don't confront you directly. They interfere subtly. Most people think spiritual attacks look dramatic or cinematic. But demons don't show up like monsters. They show up as disruptions. A sudden heaviness. A strange tiredness. A craving you didn't have a minute ago. A thought that whispers, "Do it later." That's how the 4 spiritual laws work, and before I expose those laws, you need to understand why midnight is their battlefield of choice. Midnight is when your mind is at its weakest, but your spirit is the loudest. It is the hour when heaven listens closely, and hell listens even closer. I remember the first night the coven showed me how they intercept prayers. We were in a cold underground chamber, lit only by candles. The air felt metallic, thick, almost intentional. They explained that demons don't need to stop your prayer, they only need to disconnect you from the focus behind it. If your mouth moves but your mind drifts, the prayer loses its edge. That's why distractions show up exactly when you try to pray. A notification, a memory, a sudden fear. Darkness doesn't fight you. It redirects you. Whenever you feel something resisting your prayer, understand, you are not losing, it is the prayer that is losing. Resistance is proof that something fears your voice. You feel sleepy not because you're tired, but because the spiritual atmosphere is shifting. You feel restless, not because you're weak, but because something doesn't want you to connect with clarity. Midnight prayer is not about volume, it's about alignment. Darkness works hard to break that alignment before it forms. You've probably noticed patterns you never questioned. Every time you get ready to pray, someone calls. Your mind fills with irrelevant thoughts. Your heart rate changes. You suddenly remember tasks that could wait till morning. This is the same playbook I watch them use night after night. They don't attack your prayer, they attack your attention. Because attention is the oxygen of prayer. Take that away, and the prayer suffocates. This section is not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you. Your interruptions are not random. Your exhaustion is not normal. Your sudden mood swings before prayer are not just emotions. They are engineered. Once you recognize this, you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking you lack discipline. You stop assuming you're spiritually weak. The truth is, you are being targeted because you are spiritually dangerous. Now that you understand the battlefield, you're ready to understand how they block your connection. That takes us to the 4 spiritual laws. Laws designed to twist your thoughts, disrupt your focus, and weaken your spiritual authority. And once you know these laws, you'll see exactly how to break them. Before I expose the first psalm, you need to understand the system that works against your midnight prayers. The coven didn't operate randomly. They operated by laws, for psychological spiritual mechanisms that are used to block, weaken, and frustrate anyone trying to reach clarity at night. They don't rely on brute force. They rely on precision. And the most dangerous thing about these laws is that most people obey them without realizing it. Darkness doesn't stop you from praying. It diverts you. It sends thoughts, ideas, memories, and urges that seem innocent. Suddenly, you think about a conversation from last week. Suddenly, you remember something you have to do. Suddenly, you feel the urge to check your phone. That is not a distraction. It's spiritual disorientation disguised as thought. If diversion doesn't work, emotional fog does. This is when your heart becomes heavy for no reason. You feel sad, irritated, guilty, or anxious right before you pray. It's intentional. When your emotions cloud, your spirit dims. In the coven, we learned that an emotionally unstable person prays with a fractured focus. And fractured focus produces weak prayers. This law was used so often that it became a joke among practitioners. They called it the pillow curse. When someone tries to pray at midnight, demons create an unnatural drowsiness, not because you're tired, but because your spiritual frequency rises. And the moment it rises, The enemy tries to shut it down. That sudden sleepiness? That's interference, not exhaustion. This isn't literal noise, it's mental noise. Overthinking, racing thoughts, imaginations that escalate quickly. The moment your spiritual sensitivity heightens, darkness floods the mind with noise to drown clarity. In the Coven, they said, "A noisy mind cannot hear God." And they were right. Noise is the enemy of discernment. These laws are not random attacks. They are predictable strategies. Once you know them, you see them clearly. The moment you recognize their patterns, the power they once had collapses. And this is where the Psalms come in. Each psalm doesn't just fight these laws, it reverses them. Where diversion clouds your mind, the psalm of exposure lights it. Where emotional fog suffocates you, the psalm of clarity clears the air. Where sleep manipulation weakens you, the psalm of strength awakens you. Where noise overwhelms you, the psalm of stillness silences everything.
You are not weak. You are simply being worked against.
But now, with these laws exposed, your midnight prayers will no longer be intercepted blindly. You will understand the terrain, the traps, and the tactics before you even kneel. And that is what prepares you for the psalm that freezes demons themselves. There comes a moment in every battle where fear tries to cut the fight out of you before the enemy even arrives. That's the moment this psalm was made for. It wasn't crafted for peaceful mornings or quiet meditations. It was forged for the instant when your chest tightens, your thoughts scatter, and something you cannot see presses against your spirit, demanding surrender. That is the exact second this psalm freezes the darkness mid-stride. When I was still inside the Coven, we never feared noise. We feared interruption. Because demons don't thrive on power alone. They thrive on momentum. A single whisper of this psalm could collapse that momentum like snapping a bowstring. I remember one night when our ritual was building force, crackling, and ready to strike. But in the next room, someone murmured the first line of the psalm, and everything stopped. The air thinned. The energy dissolved. Even the demons recoiled, not from volume, but from authority. That's what most people never understand. The attack doesn't crush you. Your reaction does. The spike of fear, the racing thoughts, the sense of powerlessness. Darkness counts on that reflex. But this psalm disrupts that reflex the way a sudden light shatters a nightmare. It cuts off the emotional surge before it can take root, leaving the demon without a foothold inside your mind. Because once fear loses its speed, the attacker loses its strength. Maybe you felt that jolt at night, the kind that wakes you before you know why. The heaviness in the room, the racing heartbeat. That invisible presence is waiting for your panic to open the door. This psalm interrupts that cycle so completely that demons experience it like hitting a spiritual wall. It freezes them, not by force, but by breaking their psychological advantage. And when the darkness stops moving, you start thinking clearly. You see the situation instead of drowning in it. You feel your authority instead of your fear. You recognize that the thing trying to overwhelm you only had as much power as your reaction allowed. This isn't just a psalm, it's a switch, a reset, a command that halts the oncoming rush so you can stand still, breathe, and take back control. When you master this moment of stillness, this spiritual freeze frame, you stop being the one who flinches first. Darkness realizes it cannot push you, cannot provoke you, cannot rush you into surrender. And that's when your presence becomes dangerous. Because the next step isn't defense anymore. The next step is reversal, where the attack boomerangs back to its origin. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from feeling attacked by something you can't see and were never invited to. It's the weight of waking up drained, the streak of misfortune that doesn't make sense, the sudden heaviness that appears right after you start making progress. Most people blame themselves. But inside the Coven, we knew better. Attacks are assignments. And what terrified witches more than anything was the one psalm that didn't just block those assignments, it sent them back home. This is the psalm of reversal, the spiritual mirror the kingdom of darkness refuses to look into. When I was still part of the rituals, every spell, every curse, every intention had a destination. But there was one night I will never forget. We targeted someone we assumed was spiritually weak, quiet, introverted, never fought back. But when this person whispered the lines of this psalm, the air cracked like something snapping in the unseen. The force we sent out boomeranged back with twice the intensity. One of our strongest practitioners collapsed, gasping, because the intention she released had come back marked, "Return to sender." That was the night we learned. This psalm doesn't defend. It judges. Most people think they are helpless because the attacks keep coming. But the truth is painful and empowering. You were never meant to absorb what wasn't yours. Darkness thrives when you let its weight sit on your chest. When you assume every misfortune is just life. When you treat spiritual warfare like bad luck instead of an active assignment. This psalm breaks that lie. It declares that anything sent against you must turn around and answer to the sender, not the target. And once that reversal begins, something shifts inside you. You stop flinching at every shadow. You stop wondering why everything feels heavy. You stop accepting pain as part of your identity. Instead, you realize that you carry spiritual legal rights that witches fear more than their own rituals. Because demons do not fear resistance. They fear consequences. This psalm delivers consequences. The moment you speak it, you step out of the victim's role and into the judge's chair. You stop being a container for attacks and become a barrier they cannot cross. And once reversal becomes your normal, something powerful awakens, an understanding that the next psalm won't just shield you, it will surround you with a protection demons refuse to challenge.